Well, last time I told you that about my praying for a new car and praying for a reliable car in the name of Jesus. I told you how that we had decided in the Sunday school class that I could pray for a reliable car in the name of Jesus because of the servicemen's ministry that I was involved in. But I couldn't pray for a new car. So when I prayed for the car, a reliable car, in the name of Jesus. But then I tacked onto it and I said, God, you know I've been driving old clunkers. That's cars that need constant repair ever since I got my driver's license. So I asked him to give me a new car. And you know what he did? He made it possible for me to get a new car. Now, somebody might say, well, Bob, how did God make it possible for you to get a new car? Well, I'll tell you how. First of all, he gave me the job at Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. And secondly, when I went and applied for a loan at the bank, where my parents had been banking for some time, the loan officer gave me, took the loan application, and he gave me no hope, no idea that I might get the loan approved, but he decided to take it anyway. The reason he didn't think it would get approved is because I didn't have any credit rating at all. And furthermore, I hadn't been in my current employment long enough. So that was 2 strikes against me. And I found out later that actually he called up my mother and asked her why she wouldn't co-sign for the loan. And my mother told him, well, he hasn't asked me. The only reason is because he hasn't asked me. She said, I think he wants to do this on his own. So, okay. And he hung up. And about a week later, I got a phone call that said, your loan has been approved. And you have the funding. You have the loan, just come sign the papers. So I went shopping for a 1969 Nova. I'd already kind of shopped around. I had a pretty good idea how much it was going to cost. And I went to the Chevy dealer and I ordered a brand new 1969 Nova with a dark blue top and a light blue bottom. And the salesman tried real hard to talk me out of the two-tone paint. He said, no, what you really need is vinyl top. And I said, I don't want a vinyl top. They're too much work. I said, I just want the 2 colors. And he said, well, that won't have resale value. And I said, I'm not reselling the car. I'm buying the car to keep it, to drive it. So I don't care. I don't care about resale value. And finally he goes, okay, I'll order it the way you want it. Very reluctantly, but he did. And so he ordered it, and when I got it, matter of fact, it had 28 miles on it. I figured they probably got the 28 miles just driving it around, testing it, or whatever. But it was a brand new car. And with a reliable car like that, with a new car, I made a couple trips up to Vancouver, BC, British Columbia, and visited a friend of mine that I had met at Camp Homewood. And then I decided, you know what, I could go even further than that. I could go to Prairie Valley Institute. I could go to Spring Conference. Prairie Valley Institute has a conference every spring during the Easter break. And that is the last thing that happens is the seniors graduate from Prairie Valley Institute. So it's graduation. It's a missions conference. There are missionaries from all over the world there, fantastic speakers. And so I wanted to go up and participate in that conference. Now at Prairie Valley Institute, the students during the conference would move out into the gymnasium and they would give the dorm rooms to the guests, the visitors for the conference, which meant that you got a free room, you got free food, and there was no cost to the conference. You just came and you just enjoyed it. And that's what I did. I went up. Now, there were a couple of students at Prairie that were there when I was there before. Matter of fact, one of them, Ed Kaufman's roommate, he saw me and said, Bob Shreve, what are you doing here? I said, I'm back for conference. And he goes, you don't remember me, do you? And I go, yeah, I remember you. He goes, okay, what's my name? And I could remember him, but I couldn't remember his name. It's a problem I've had all my life. And I couldn't remember his name. And he said, I'm Ed Kaufman's roommate. Now, Ed Kaufman, I remembered, he was in my class, but I couldn't remember his name. And then he said, I gave you vitamins, and I gave you medicine. And I was feeling really, really embarrassed by this time. I just wanted to dig a hole, climb in it. But I never could remember his name. Finally, he told me. And I was just so embarrassed. But I just couldn't remember it. So I was there at the conference. Now, the missionary conference, you eat with the students. When you go through the food line, you don't get to choose where you sit. You just sit at the next empty table with whoever happened to be in the line with you. It's not a pick your favorite spot, but it's you eat with the guy who was in line just in front of you or right behind you until that table's full, and then you fill up the next one. So I've sat down, and these two students are sitting there, and I didn't know either one of them. But one of them starts talking about his roommate and how terrible his roommate is. He's going to be so glad to be rid of his roommate, how he just can't stand his roommate, how he doesn't even go back to the room anymore except to sleep. And while he was talking, I was thinking, this guy needs to get Galatians 2:20 before he goes to the mission field. I mean, he can't go to the mission field with that kind of an attitude. Not everybody's going to be exactly what he likes on the mission field. So when I was done eating, I said to him, I don't doubt anything you said about your roommate. I'm not questioning or doubting anything that you said. But this I would ask you, if Jesus Christ had the same attitude toward you that you have toward your roommate, where would you be? Would he have died on the cross for you? And then I got up and I left. So I had some interactions there, and I was having a good time. There's another custom that Prairie Bible Institute has. I went to the information booth and I filled out a card saying that I had room for 3 passengers with a little bit of luggage. There's a custom at Prairie Bible Institute when the guests have room in their car, they fill out a card that says I'm going to this location and I have room for this many passengers and this much luggage. So I filled out that card and then I went on about my business. A couple days, I think it was, maybe about halfway through the conference, I was in my room. Now, the conference has 2 hours of meetings in the morning, 2 hours of meetings after lunch, and 2 hours of meeting after supper. And otherwise, you kind of got your own time, but there's nothing to go do. Three Hills is a very, very tiny town. There's nothing there to go do. So I was in my room and I was praying and I was talking to God and I was talking to him about the lack of a girlfriend in my life. And I was asking him, why is it other guys can find dedicated, beautiful, dedicated Christian women to go to the mission field with them, but I can't? I said, why is that? And well, can't you provide somebody, And as I was praying this way, there was a knock at the door. And I went to the door and I saw, as I opened the door, I saw a beautiful woman, matter of fact, 2 women. And I looked at the one standing right there in front of me and I thought to myself, like that one. Now, I must have actually said it, not just thought it, because she stepped back and pushed her friend forward and kind of hid behind her friend. And the friend said, I'm Adie Hinkle, and this is Karen Allen, and we are here to see if we can get a ride to Seattle-Tacoma Airport. You had put in the information booth that you had room for passengers. Do you still have it? And I said, how much luggage do you have? And they said, a carry-on suitcase and a small suitcase. So 2 small suitcases. And I said, okay, should be able to handle that. So I told him, I said, I'll be in the parking lot by the Tabernacle. It's a 2-tone 1969 Nova. You should be able to spot it. And I'll be there first thing Monday morning. So, and they left. Not too long later, I got a phone call from Elaine Sorensen, who said she needed a ride to Seattle-Tacoma Airport and wondered if I still had room. And I did. So I asked her, how much luggage you got? She said, 1 suitcase. And I said, okay, yeah, we can do that. So my car was full. And that morning, Monday morning, when it came time to go, Karen Allen showed up with her hair in curlers, and she got in the back seat and went right to sleep. Eddie Hinkle got in the back seat as well, and then Elaine Sorensen showed up and got in the front seat. And before we took off, I told them all, I said, okay, I'm going to be driving straight through, but whoever's sitting in the passenger seat has the job of talking to me and making sure I stay awake. You can talk in the back, sleep in the back, whatever you want to do, but the person in the front needs to talk to me and make sure I stay awake. So time it out, figure it out amongst yourselves, so that there's somebody awake who can stay awake in the front seat at all times, the whole trip. So we did. And as it wound up, during the wee hours of the night, from like about 10 o'clock to the morning, Eddie Hinkle was the one that was awake, and she basically rode in the passenger seat and told me her life story as we went down the road. Now, Elaine Sorensen had family. Her family lived just south of the Canadian border, so when we came across the Canadian border, Elaine gave us directions, and we got to her family, and we pulled in there. They had a bed, and I went and took a nap. They fixed breakfast. When breakfast was ready, I got up and we all ate breakfast. We thanked them for the visit. I apologized for sleeping instead of visiting, but they said, we understand. And then we got back in the car and we're headed down the road. We're headed down Highway 5, and I heard Karen say to Eddie Hinkle, you pay him for gas, and when I get my check cashed, I'll reimburse you. Now, when I heard that, I said to Karen, I said, so is that check a government check or a personal check? And she said, it's a check for my parents. And I said, so that would be an out-of-town personal check. And I said, there's not a bank in Washington State that'll cash it. And she said, no, that can't be. I'm counting on the money to pay for my ticket. And I said, well, they won't cash it. They'll let you deposit it, and then you can take the money out when the money comes and the money clears. But you can't just cash it. And she said, oh no, what am I going to do? So she wanted me to pull over, so we pulled over into Bellevue, and she went to a couple of banks, and they wouldn't cash it. And she came back to the car almost in tears and said, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I said, well, what we can do is I'll go take you with me, home with me. We'll drop Elaine off because her flight leaves at about 1 o'clock. I said, we'll drop Elaine off at Seattle-Tacoma Airport, and then I'll take you around home to my home. I'll pick up my check, I'll cash my check, and then I'll use my check to cash your check, and then I'll deposit your check to my bank, and when it clears, I'll have the money. So no problem, we can take care of it. So we did. That's what we did, and I took them to my house. And on the way through, though, when I picked up my check at Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, I told them how I worked there, and then on the way through town, I showed them the serviceman center that I pick up the sailors at, and on the way through past my church, I pointed out my church, and by the time we got home, they pretty much had an idea of the ministry that I did, and all the ramifications of it. Then we had supper. My mom fixed supper, and then I took them to catch their flight. I think it was at 7:30, somewhere around in there. Took them around to Seattle-Tacoma Airport. When we got to Seattle-Tacoma Airport, Eddie Hinkle went to pay me for gas, and I said, no. You want to pay me? You pray for the ministry. Pray for the servicemen's ministry. Pray for the church's ministry. And they said, okay, we'll do that. So I gave them my address, and they told me when they got to Alaska, they would write and give me their address. And that's, and then they went and got on their plane and headed for Alaska. Now I went back home, and I'm home and I'm kind of moping around the house. Well, not kind of, I'm moping around the house. I was wishing I could go back to Prairie Valley Institute. My mom saw me, knew what was going on, and she said, Bob, you want to go back to Prairie Valley Institute, don't you? And I said, yes, I do. I do, but I can't. I said, if it hasn't been 2 years, I said, and if the problem doesn't last, Kenny's problem doesn't last 2 years, I can be reactivated. I said, if I go off to Bible school, I'll probably be reactivated and have to go in the Army, back in the Army. And I said, so I can't. I can't go. As much as I want to, I can't. And she said, well, what we could do is we could move Kenny's testing up to August instead of late September. And then if you could apply for school at Prairie and you could, get accepted, and if Kenny passes his exam, his test, you can go, and if he doesn't, you stay. I said, well, that'd be fine, but I still can't go because I've got the Army. Now, I don't know if you know this, but back then anyway, when you signed up for the Army, it was a 6-year enlistment. If you volunteered, it was 3 years active duty and 3 years inactive duty. And if you were drafted, it's 2 years active duty and 4 years inactive duty. So I'm still technically in the military for another 5 years. Well, actually 4 years, because I've already spent one year of it. But I'm going, there's no way I can go back to Prairie Bible Institute. And next time, I'll tell you what God worked out.